Samsung versus Apple. It's a battle that's raged in the pit of the smartphone market for the past 10 years, if not longer. This is the Galaxy S10 Plus, and this is the iPhone XS Max. The two big flagships from both of these giant companies. But the question in 2019 is, will choosing one over the other leave you with a significantly poorer experience, or are you just as well buying either of them? I'm Cam from Pocket-lint, and this is our comparison. Okay, so spoiler alert, both of these phones are very good, and it starts with attention to detail in design. Both look and feel like high quality premium smartphones with their polished metal edges and the glass backs. There's precision in the port and button placements and in the finish. Both companies have had to juggle prioritizing technological features and design. For Apple, you'll notice how the rounded corners on the screen match the roundness of the phone corners, and how the bezel thickness is the same all the way around up to the notch. That gives you a really pleasing, consistent and symmetrical appearance from the front. But then that advanced Face ID technology has meant adding quite a hefty notch at the top, and that sometimes gets in the way of content. For Samsung, they wanted to keep using that curved glass on the edges of the OLED screen, and that means the bezel isn't uniform all the way around. The bottom edge is thicker than the sides and the top bezel, making it seem slightly less balanced, but it's not something that really bothers you day in and day out. Plus, that hole punch cutout means more of the front surface is dominated by screen. Turn them to the back, and despite the oddness of that long rectangle on the back, I quite like that it makes the Samsung symmetrical. Apple's camera in the corner is iconic now, but protrudes quite far, even if it is really nicely finished. Now onto those screens. Now Samsung's is a QHD plus OLED panel, which means it's slightly sharper than Apple's 1242 by 2068 resolution OLED screen. It's a slightly longer ratio, 6.5 inch versus Apple's 6.4 inch, and it takes up more of the available space. And technologically speaking, it's better than Apple's too, being HDR10 Plus compliant versus Apple's HDR10. But really in daily use, you're not going to notice that difference. It's not something that makes a big impact on the phone screen. Both screens offer fantastic color reproduction, detail, brightness and contrast. An iPhone has True Tone, which means it automatically adjusts the warmth of the whites, depending on the light that's in the room. Now, whichever phone you use, you're going to get a fantastic display. But like I said, each has its compromises. That iPhone notch with some games and apps will cut off some content on the top or on the side of the screen. Samsung's minor flaws are different though, in that sometimes the slight curvature means that the very top and the bottom of some video gets ever so slightly distorted. And then the other element is that apps often have a black bar to disguise that punch hole camera, and that makes the picture look uneven because on one side you have a straight edge with right angled corners, and on the other side you have rounded corners. Now onto cameras, and Samsung went all out this year, and I've not been shy in declaring my love for the versatility of this camera system. The combination of the regular, the 2x zoom and the ultra-wide cameras is so useful, and means I genuinely don't miss my real camera when I go out and about with my phone. It's almost like carrying a camera with additional lenses, or just one really good zoom lens with a wide angle. With that said, I think the actual results from the iPhone, considering it's just point and shoot, are slightly better. Samsung's primary camera, which has that mechanical aperture, seems to leave photos looking a tiny bit more flat, and the iPhone's HDR makes daylight shots look dynamic and rich. And the iPhone's actually decent in low light too, despite not having that dual aperture like Samsung. Neither of these phones though is particularly awe-inspiring when it comes to nighttime or really low light shots. They don't have that night sight camera yet that you see on the likes of the Pixel 3 or the Huawei P30 Pro. Now feel free to tell me which you think looks better. After all, this is almost always down to personal preference. So if you think the Samsung's looks better from the video that I've shown you, please feel free to let me know in the comments. So on to performance, and it feels a lot like the rest of these phones' features. Neither is noticeably worse or better than the other. They're both snappy, speedy, powerful, and load apps and games quickly. Samsung's 7nm processor is ridiculously powerful and well cooled to keep it running efficiently, as is the iPhone's A12 Bionic chip. and Apple has the advantage of optimizing it for the software in-house. Now, a lot of perceived speed around the general user interface is just the programmed speed of animations, rather than the raw speed of the hardware. Still, both can handle the most graphically intense games and apps without really any problem. Now, if it was down to pure numbers, Samsung's 4100 mAh battery beats the iPhone's, because the iPhone has roughly 3174 mAh. But with the iPhone's software optimization and the fact that Apple can build it all in-house, you don't really notice a lot of difference in day-to-day use. The key takeaway here though is that you'll easily get through a full day with either phone without needing to plug them in. But it's in charging where you might notice a difference if you have the right power chargers. Both can charge wirelessly, but Samsung's can charge roughly twice as fast with the right wireless charger. And both charge at the same 15-watt wired speed as well, but you do need to make sure you have the right powered adapter. The one in the box with the iPhone is just 5 watts. It's only a third of what the iPhone is capable of taking. Now, choosing which one of these phones is right for you is about narrowing down which of the features is more important to you. Samsung's feature list and the hardware is fantastic, and that camera is brilliant too. And we love that edge-to-edge display that goes all the way to the edges and curves around it. It has a very modern look, despite having existed for the past few years. Apple's iPhone, as always, is very convenient, very powerful, reliable, has all the apps you could think of. It's also classy looking, and if you're a Mac user, it fits ridiculously well into that ecosystem with features like AirDrop and iCloud. So technically speaking, the Galaxy S10 might have the better feature list. And it starts at a lower price than the iPhone XS Max. And that may just be what sways it for you. The cost is quite noticeably different, especially if you go all the way up to the highest capacity options. And the Samsung is easily as good, if not better in some instances. Which of these two phones do you think is best? Which would you choose as your daily driver if you could pick one? Let me know in the comments, or shout at me on Twitter. I'm at Cam Bunton. I'll see you again soon. So if you want to see more videos from Pocket-lint and myself, you can hit that subscribe button, and there's a little bell you can click as well to make sure you get a notification every time we upload a new one.